We're going to get started for the January Mobility and Transportation Advisory Board meeting, the first of the new year. Happy New Year, everyone. We're going to do a roll call. Charlotte Ford is not here. Lisa Hearn.
Here.
Aaron Louth is not here. Taryn Malavy-Babb.
Here.
Elizabeth McCabe.
Here.
Paul Work is not here. John Reagan.
Here.
Brooke Webb.
Here.
Rudy Supel.
Here.
We have a representative from the police department.
We do not.
And Flynn. Present. I see Kyle Brown is online, standing in for Mr. Haberman. And
Here.
I don't believe we have Mark Wheeler, unless he's online. All right, so we are going to start off with citizens' comments. I do not see any in the room. Are there any online? Looks like there's some participants. Please, if you are available online and you would like to comment during citizen comments, please raise your hand and we will call on you and ask you to unmute and you will be able to speak. Yeah, the attendees tab. Am I blocking your way?
Yep. Now you are. Now you are.
You were so close.
Okay, so this one here.
If it's time to move on.
All right, Richard Manning.
Did you do the minutes?
Oh, meeting minutes. No, sorry. I was not here for the December meeting, but do I have a motion to approve December meeting minutes?
I'll motion to approve.
Second,
I'll second.
any, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, sorry, on the citizens' comments. So Richard Manning, you are up. You'll be able to unmute and please state your name and address and you'll have 5 minutes to speak. If you're there, Richard, please go ahead. Should be off mute. Good.
Richard, if you're on mute, it's on your side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought
Oh, there you go.
you can hear me now? Great. Yeah, as I said, I live on 1775 Theodan Drive, which is right off of Helen Drive. The reason I was attending this meeting, I always intended to attend the traffic board, but I guess that was sunsetted. But anyways, I understand the Mobility and Transportation Board is the first stop for requesting a speed bump. And the speed bump I'm requesting would be somewhere along Helen Drive between McFarland and Twin Hills. The reason being that's a very highly traffic connection between for people going to and from the city, and unfortunately at very high rates of speed for the particular area. But let me just give you a little background of my frustration and concern. And I'm a 40-year resident of the township. It was never like this. It's like it's the Wild West between McFarland Road and Gilkison Road, Beverly Road commercial area, right in downtown Mount Lebanon, which is an obscenity, I think, the speeders and crazy people going right by the public safety building. But anyways, having said that, I did contact initially Lieutenant Hyman to voice my concern. We had very nice conversations, very cordial. Unfortunately, all I got from him were reasons why they cannot calm traffic. And I'll give you a quick list. Ever since COVID, it's a societal problem. We've had 30 break-ins in the evening. We've had staffing problems with retirements. We only have 1.5 cars per traffic, 1.5 patrol cars, excuse me, per shift for the whole township, which is unbelievable. When I first moved here, it wasn't but after the first year that I bought a Chinese maple tree to plant in my new home. And I was going down McFarland Road from West Liberty Avenue. I was pulled over by a policeman because I had the small tree on the front seat of my car. It happened to be a Chinese maple tree and he mistook it for a marijuana plant. True story, true story. And he insisted on saying the receipt. Needless to say, I was okay. I'm a child of the 60s, but that was a long time ago. But seriously, I just don't understand why or how. All I'm getting is reasons why traffic can't be calmed. And I did it, and after another frustrating day in the Mount Lebanon Business District, I stopped by the police department, and one of Lieutenant Hyman's officers came down and was kind enough to speak to me, but it was the same thing. Now, I did just a little bit of research. Philadelphia's had great success with speed cameras, and I don't know why the township doesn't try and get a state or federal grant for speed cameras. Philadelphia's Roosevelt Boulevard in Greater Philadelphia, if you know, is like a 12 lane road. And the traffic deaths have decreased dramatically because of the speed cameras. There's no warning signs, going in and out of Mount Lebanon. Why not some flashing signs? Why not just having a patrol car visible? Why not have a random day where police officers go out and just blitz particular, randomly for say a 4 hour period instead of the 1.5 cars, get maybe 4 cars out and give out some tickets. The one thing that really gripes me is our cars with blacked out windows, front and back, which is violates a state law. State law says in the front windows you have to have 70% visible natural light. But the Lieutenant Hyman's officer said, oh, they don't ticket those because the people just go to the magistrate and they tell them they're going to take it down, and they are let go without a fine or any penalty whatsoever. So that I don't know why you can't just do that. If you did that enough, you would make your presence known, or the police would make their presence known that they're serious about controlling traffic. There used to be a police car on McFarland Road, right where AutoZone is. There used to be one at the fireplace. One time they even had one with a mannequin in it, if you can believe it. And it was good enough for Normandy invasion, where they had fake.
That's your time, Mr. Manning.
Okay, that's it.
I appreciate your commentary. Deaths in the United States are a 40-year high in terms of people on our streets and roads. Most of those increases have been in pedestrians, so I appreciate that you're asking for police efforts, but our efforts would be better spent in engineering and design. And I hope 2025 is the year we do prioritize engineering and design and fixing our streets via traffic calming. So thank you for your time.
There's one other comment for you, Mr. Manning. The state legislature established which municipalities are allowed to do the cameras. Currently, we are not on that list. Multiple generations of commissioner have been advocating for more of these, more legislation to enable Mount Lebanon police to do different types of enforcement, but at this point, it is a state legislative issue. I can tell you that the commission, as far as I'm one of the commissioners, I think everybody would be very supportive of funding those types of programs if we could, but currently they're just not allowed for us. So just kind of an FYI on that one point. But you are in the right place for traffic calming. Why don't you send me an email? Again, I'm on the website, it's Andrew Flynn. Send me an email and we'll make sure that we take you through the process for Helen and we get more details.
All right. I don't see any other hands raised other than Mr. Manning's. I don't think we've had any latecomers, so at this point, we will close the citizens' comments. I don't have a detailed chairperson's report. I wanted to commend DPW on the work they've done with the recent windstorm, going from trees to snow and probably back again. So it's good work that's been done, and the roads are very clear. I would say that it's been even more treacherous for those that walk or choose to walk or only have the walking as their choice. So it is telling that we can look at bare pavement directly beside fully unshoveled sidewalks and swaths of sidewalks unshoveled. The current solution, and I commend the program of Snow Angels, and I know I saw multiple people posting about Snow Angels and wishing they had more opportunities to shovel. So if people are out there, I encourage them to look into the Snow Angel program, but it is a all volunteer unpaid service versus a significant investment in DPW and even school district time on their sidewalks, but it is a treacherous effort out there. I've tried to switch from giving folks the #1 sign when they drive too fast near me. I've gone with the thumbs down. It resulted in someone telling me to buy a car. I do own 2 cars. And I don't think walking should be looked at as a lower option. It is a better option in many ways. So I hope 2025 with the active transportation plan, we sort of switch the pyramid and reprioritize how we go about movement in our community, considering we are a walking district. So I will pass my soapbox to the commissioner.
I will be in shorter. Commission had its reorganization meeting last night. I will continue with this board as its liaison for the next year. Think this big, looking forward to a good year. Obviously lots to do. Yeah, again, I mean, it's obviously just a whole lot going on. So hopefully we can hit the ground running and push through 2025.
There we go. Moving into the staff liaison reporting, or Mr. Sewell.
Sure, I just got a couple of brief things here. Police Department, Traffic Division. Informed me that they completed the speed and count collection data on Mayfair. So I forwarded that to Mr. Haberman, I think 2 days ago. And so he has that information for review. They will be setting up one Austin to get the data on that street. I removed that flag that the person that came and commented about that was blocking the sign over on Kelso at Pembroke. I don't know how I didn't see it the first time, but it was kind of blowing around and partially obstructing that. So I removed that myself. So that was done the next day after the last meeting that we had. And you'd asked Beth about the cost of the installing a crosswalk. There's some variables involved with this, but basically to have a mobilization cost, it's $2,500. Basically the piano keys are using thermoplastic. It's basically about $160 per key. So to install a crosswalk where one does not exist currently is about $3,300 for just one crosswalk. That's on an average, our roads average about 22 feet from curb to curb. Now, if we have to have the lines eradicated, if there's existing parallel lines, 6-inch lines, that adds an additional cost to that. That mobilization cost is $2,500 plus $4 per linear foot for those lines. So it works out to be about $6,000 if they have to take the old crosswalks out and put new piano keys in. And then if the road's wider, then it's going to cost more. So this is on average, that's like 5 piano keys for a 22-foot crossing. Spaced flat, they're 2 feet wide by 8 feet long, and they're spaced 5 foot on centers.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sure. That's all I have.
Subcommittee reports. We'll start with capital budget. Anything from capital budget?
Only that our next meeting will be in February, probably be the 2nd or 3rd Monday. I'll send out to the committee members, their preference and we'll get a meeting on the board. Or the plan will be to start working towards the 2026 budget. So getting some prioritizations and some thoughts that we present towards the board for a vote that would then go to release to hopefully be included into the 2026. So as far as the subcommittees go, for the policy or the street design, I need those committees start thinking about if you want to include funds to support anything that's an objective of your subcommittees. Then we'll need that as we prepare our budget.
Okay. Moving to the policy subcommittee.
We have had one meeting since the last board meeting, and that meeting was entirely discussing the commentary document that we submitted with the Citizen Street Improvement Plan proposal. We spent about Marty Basic and I spent about an hour just discussing the document from start to finish, and then I went up and wrote up the document later. And yeah, but that was the extent of our activities over the holiday.
And that lives with commission now, correct? Or does it live with? Where does the citizens street improvement policy?
I believe it was a commission.
Yeah, because we voted for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I forwarded it to the manager and Commissioner Flynn, so, he has it. And I think he shared it with the entire commission,
The
didn't he?
entire commission received it, with a request for review and consideration, so. Where's that?
Sounds good. And then. Mr. Flynn, I believe Paul said he was gonna send us a summary from street design, but I don't know that I saw it.
I don't believe so.
So I wasn't at the last meeting. What, did we have a last meeting? Do you- Can you give us some context? Cause I don't have. it.
It's been a while. Last I recall, we were still discussing kind of the process that we need to bed down in terms of how do we get requests? Where does information come from? Whether it's, you know, the 5-year street list that Rudy would provide annually, or it is, you know, someone saying, hey, I want a speed bump, or it is potentially traffic accidents rising to something. How do we understand kind of that convergence of information to, you know, understand and then say, okay, now what happens, right? How do we take a random street and then say, let's look at it, let's engage residents, let's have design concepts. And then work through a process. So we're still trying to figure out what that looks like. You know, again, I tend to over engineer, which is kind of dangerous. It's not always that helpful, but at the same time, we need some level of structure so that, again, when people come to these types of meetings, they say, what do I do next? Everybody has a clear answer that it, you know, somehow goes to this subcommittee, which has a clear process that it needs to take things through. So I think we're just still trying to figure that out. It's moving forward. Hopefully sooner rather than later we get something. Or a vote.
And it's not specifically calling out the traffic calming policy, but it'll be a process for our street redesigns and maybe. Look into traffic calming policy, like the traffic calming policy is a separate effort, but it could be part of this new, because, you know. Hearing Mr. Manning ask for a speed bump, you know, there are some believers in speed bumps, but they're not the only solution, and I think that's what people have seen us do the most in Mount Lebanon, but there's a lot of other solutions to work through. And I know there are many areas that have the same condition there, so just looking at a network, which I think our active transportation plan will be really helpful, like zooming out for people, it won't fix every road, but it'll give us some ideas and context there, so then run through this process, so. Right, if there's anything else,
But on that
Oh,
note,
go
though,
ahead, Charlotte.
sorry, so the active transportation plan, I know, because we have all these documents, but, is what we got funded in last year's, or for this year's budget for, getting a console to, right?
they're under this contract
Yes.
officially, already, yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then that's kind of in sort of that hand, right? Or the person that we have.
I don't know how I don't know that they've figured out how this board will participate, or gotten to that part, so I imagine.
We haven't got to that
Yeah.
stage yet,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I fully anticipate that the mobility board will be engaged on some level.
Okay.
You know, with the high transportation process
Mhm.
to be determined.
Right.
But it'll be a baselining of a lot of information, like they're gonna glean through a lot of information, I don't know. I guess the question would be, could we share the final contract with this board and just as a for reference, like what's included in that,
Yeah.
you know, the contract? Cause I think I saw I think I saw the original RFP. But I know there's
Yeah,
some
the full
changes,
scope and everything,
yeah,
yeah.
what changed, so then we kind of know, people can wrap their heads around. And if it's something like, hey, we're gonna have a X day, they may ask for support, or they may want to interview.
Yeah, the scope of work document would be be most interesting.
I'll put it in the shared folder and just let you know that it's there.
I'm excited for the team that's doing it, they it's Tool Design, who's kind of nationally known for this type of work. But they partnered with Patrick, who did the comprehensive plan, so they'll have, I don't know if everyone remembers the map that the comprehensive plan had, where people comment, have all that commentary, they'll have all the commentary throughout the comprehensive plan work, so. I think they'll really hit the ground running. The caveat is we're also doing it jointly with Dormox, so there will be some other considerations there as well, but I'm excited. For whatever that's worth. I don't think we have any old business to cover unless there, we don't have any official on the agenda, but I think new business was John, I know you submitted some details on the new business proposed name streets.
Yes.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
I have a PowerPoint, if someone's able to run it, I threw it in the SharePoint. Which is mostly just background and context, the actual.
I could try. If you want me to.
Yeah.
Or try and drive.
I'm logged in, so if you want me
Oh.
to try.
Yeah, if you can access it and cast.
Yep, give me a second.
Because I was gonna say, I think I have to X out of this and I don't think I can.
Well, you're working on that. I know in the past, I had suggested we have a segment where we discuss citizens' comments. I do have, I know. Some people already said things, but regarding Mr. Manning's comments. I also agree that in general, infrastructure is the solution to traffic calming, and that's a slow process. With the exception of one thing, the tinted windows. Tinted windows are very dangerous to pedestrians because it removes our ability to look at the driver, see what they're doing. Are they texting? Are they looking a different way than their car is facing, which is extremely common at right turns on red. So yes, illegally tinted windows, it's the car ceases to be, the driver ceases to be a human being and their car is just a deadly machine that could move in any direction.
I fully agree, because I think even some of our education and police force goes into the schools to talk to kids, like make eye contact with the driver. Well, there's no eye contact to be made.
So I was very interested to hear that this might be a magistrate issue and maybe that's where pressure needs to be placed.
Yeah. We have somebody, does the magistrate live in Mount?
We vote for them, right?
They are elected by the residents of Mount Lebanon.
I don't think punitive is the long-term answer, but I think there are things where it's like, this is an easy. This is nationwide at the state level. People like their tint, and especially in a walking community, it is. It's what we're telling people to do, make eye contact with the driver. Like, I would love to not have it be in that situation, but it eliminates that.
And I have heard how, no, I'll say to a friend, I know a gentleman who has those, he doesn't live in Mount Lebanon, but. He has been told that, he knows it's illegal, but like, again, this is just who with not anybody, but he has been told when being stopped, and I don't think it was Mount Lebanon, but just like immediately go and like, so it depends on obviously the municipality and what action's taken, but I think he had to like physically go to like shop to have it, like the cop was like, you go now. So I think, again, it's all probably discretionary, but I'm just speaking from like, one driver's example, and I completely agree with you. I don't like them at all either. I feel like there's more prevalence too. It
It
seems
puts our
like,
well, I think it's even coming from the factory, the tint has got, I know there's a limit, but it puts our police in a bad situation too. You're walking up to a car that you can't see. You've probably been in this exact situation, Mr. Lau, like it's. You can't see anything.
The tint that comes from the factory is the threshold. You can't put anything above what comes from the factory. Your factory, your windows on your car are actually tinted up to 30%.
Right.
Most of them are right at the 30% threshold. People don't realize that. So anything you add is illegal.
In the shops.
And I have experience from magistrates in multiple jurisdictions now that they just feel like dealing with it, so. Please write citations, it goes to the magistrate, they just take that off your windows.
And then.
Promise me you'll take that off your windows. I promise, Judge.
Yeah, what else, yes. I promise. All right, you wanna take the, go run show, John?
All right, so. This stems from, I think, I don't remember how this started, but at some point I was asking Rudy about pedestrian walkways, which we had a brief discussion on last week, so maybe this technically would have been old business. But we have a lot of small streets and walkways in Mount Lebanon that under local and state law are generally, they meet the definition of a street. Vehicular traffic is not usually integral to the definition of a street. I mean, this is the state of Pennsylvania. It has predated the automobile. So that's just a bit of that. That's just a bunch of code citations of what a street is from Mount Lebanon and Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. So I'm sure you've all heard of pedestrian streets, and you have like the big iconic ones that are full width and take up a lot of area. There's the 16th Street Mall in Denver, but next slide, please. You also have a lot of smaller ones that sometimes might even have businesses on them. Next slide, please. That's not what we have typically in Allegheny County, but as a hilly area, it's famously Pittsburgh, but also Mount Lebanon and a lot of other suburbs of Pittsburgh have steps and other types of pedestrian walkways throughout. Pittsburgh has recently started, I don't know how recently, but has recently started putting street signs on some of its stairs, and that's something I really appreciate because that lets me know this stair is a public way. It's not just a shortcut to someone's backyard. Next slide, please. There's another Pittsburgh stair. Next slide. Yeah, that was.
Glad you don't have to make that. Oh my goodness.
That one was
Yeah, kill us.
Okay, so here, Rudy gave me a list of a bunch of walkways and sidewalks and other things that Public Works maintains in the municipality, and that was the jumping point for my research. So here's one of our Mount Lebanon streets. This one was not defined as a pedestrian right of way, as far as I know. It is just in the street grid. It always has been as Nethkin Way, next to, I have no idea how it's pronounced, but next to the library. I think you can see it in photos dating back to the 1930s. So yeah, that little walkway back there, which I believe goes all the way from Castle Shannon Boulevard to Hazel Drive. Next slide. So here is a map. Ignore the color coding. It doesn't mean anything. At least not with regard to this talk. But these are, yeah, all public walkways and public stairs. Next slide. So after lots and lots of research, I've identified 4 categories relevant to this discussion. One are just named, they are named streets. Nethkin Way was one of them. The second one is just, well, it's just Syracuse Avenue, a portion of a street that is, part of it is open to vehicular traffic, but part of it is basically just a sidewalk or stairs in this case with no vehicular cartway, as are many in Pittsburgh. 3 is alleys and pedestrian walkway right of ways that are basically the same thing as number 2 in practice, but not formally. And number 4 is just pedestrian rights of way that have never been named and are kind of distinct from the surrounding street grid. Next slide. So category 1, Nethkin Way by the library, Ridgedale Street over by with the school.
He lived over there.
Foster.
Over by Foster Elementary, which is actually 3 blocks long and goes through a driveway, but the pedestrian right of way is maintained.
There's a couple driveways actually.
Yeah,
There's one
at least 2.
Rockwood, and then there's another one on Vermont and Bella Vista too.
Okay. I did go down, I remember like two driveways that just run right down the middle or shit split. Anyway, next slide. Then Syracuse Avenue is it's kind of its own little animal. It's just steps built in the Syracuse Avenue right of way. There is a vehicular part of the street as well. So it's not entirely pedestrian, but there's a segment, one block. And also half a block of paper street that is now a dead end. Next slide, please. Okay. Then there are walkways that are, they're basically in alignment with with a existing street, so they are functionally the same thing as those Syracuse Avenue steps are. But they were constructed as a separate piece of infrastructure. And also municipal way is its own thing, because the entire municipal way right of way was vacated in the past and then rebuilt on it if like 20 feet away. And the stairs are just like left over. So I think that means they technically like were subsumed into the municipal building land parcel. So technically it's not a public right of way on paper right now, but I think it could be very easily made one. But then everything else is like distinct public rights of way mostly. This is a pathway that lines up nicely with Beverly Road. That's the end of Beverly Road, dead end. You can continue through. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
Here's a bunch more. A walkway by Vermont Avenue. Iroquois Drive to Gilkison Road. Hillaire Drive to a school. Moffett Street to Old Hickory. And Veland Drive cul-de-sac to the park, or not a cul-de-sac. Veland Drive dead end to the main park. Next slide. And then there's a bunch of walkways that are the same thing as we just discussed, but they're not really it's not like in line with the street. You can't just say, oh, this is functionally an extension of Moffett Street or something. So yeah, next slide, please. Most of them have stairs. There are very few that do not have stairs of some sort. Next slide, please. Okay. Some of these were constructed with cul-de-sacs. This is a tangent. I'm probably wasting time, but so yeah, basically what a cul-de-sac is it's just like, we're going to make this a dead end, and dead ends suck. And that means if we make our streets suck, cars won't drive down it. But if you build a little path, pedestrians can still get out, so that means your street sucks for cars, but not for pedestrians.
It's like a boss level.
It is a modal filter, and
with the best kind.
And it looks like some of these cul-de-sacs were designed by people who kind of knew what they were doing. Next slide, please. Okay, so everything I just said is, well, this proposal that I want to do is, the ultimate goal is, I think some subset of these based on importance should be signed like Pittsburgh is doing. I think it's a very valuable and somewhat prestigious thing to do for your pedestrian streets. And also I stumbled across a clause in the municipal code that kind of sounds like what you might be legally obligated to. So next slide. Okay, yeah, so here, practically speaking, when you look at some of these, like, that's public? Can you tell? Some of them have the benefit of like handrails that no private citizen would ever install because they're metal. But these, they're just, where does that go? Next slide, please. Here's some relevant recommendations from the comprehensive plan. It supports the enhancement and the enhancement of our pedestrian thoroughfares. Next slide. Okay, so here's the actual action items that I think we should propose to the commission to be followed up by some proposal for signage. So a bunch of these have no names. They would need to be named. And they have no names and they have no logical name to be appended. So we would need names for those. I was trying to come up with suggestions so that there would be a placeholder in case no public comment would be. No public comments provided answers, but that I didn't get finished with that. I actually have suggestions for most of them, but so we have two streets and a portion of a street that already have names. Then we have a bunch of streets that are like they're logical extensions of another street. So I would propose just call it that. It is another block of that street. And then we have 6 pedestrian rights of way that are just kind of their own thing and would need no names. So yeah, proposal would be solicit public comments to get names for those 6 streets. And come up with names. And then formally, I actually have a draft that can be hammered into an ordinance, but it says like it reaffirms those 3 where I say no action. Just so they're all on a list together. The next 3, it would be to basically like formally append those walkways to an existing street and say this is now part of Municipal Way, this is now part of Iroquois Drive, this is now part of Moffett Street. And then the last one would be to name street the ones that don't have any names. Oh, and to do like some of the back end work of putting these like in the GIS system and stuff. Cause like I noticed some are not in there at all, some are in there as sidewalks. So next slide, please. Okay, and that's a bunch of the data I collected. I think that's the extent of my presentation. I did have a more detailed proposal in the form of this draft ordinance over here. But I really doubt anyone had time to read it because I was hammering it out at the last minute. But yeah, thoughts, questions?
So these are all currently maintained now by the municipality. So they're known entities that we maintain.
Right.
Do you have, like, how are they named or referred to, like, in your world? Kind of like more.
It varies. I mean, I put together a list years ago so that our crews know where to go. We have a
Yeah.
checklist for maintenance purposes, for safety purposes, safety checks. Some of them we clear the vegetation, we maintain, we trim the hedges back and things that are barriers along the edges. Some we don't, some the residents are responsible for. So it all depends. But they're basically I think the vast majority of them are based on either streets, like for example, Ellwood and Flower Hill.
Yeah,
And we know where that's at, once you're there a couple times with senior staff, then that that's one to check or clean. Or landmarks that are close to them, those type of things. And some are in the park system, some are within Bird Park or within, there's a heavily used one from Mayfair to Youngwood and Youngwood to Beadling. It's just a straight path that the school kids from that part of the neighborhood, Mayfair and Vernon and all those are Park Ridge Lane. They go to Markham School and they walk up through that path. They use that to get to school in the morning. So it's those type of things that are even within the parks. And we spend a little more time on those, just making sure they're clear, no tripping hazards, debris, things like that.
With the exception of the one path that went through, I think it's referred to on the park system map as Hoodridge Park. Which I generally ignore things that were in the parks. These are all street-like walkways, so it connects to other streets. You go through a park. And that one is unique and it is not defined as a pedestrian right of way. It's just a path across a municipal parcel that rides up to one building. And also there's some easements there for utilities, so.
Don, and your recommendation is those that are basically the extension of streets. To keep them the street name so that it wouldn't necessarily, we're not.
Not keep it, to make it, to instate it as
As a-
that. The only one that was already it was like, as far as I can tell, it just is that street is those Syracuse Avenue steps. As
Oh,
far as my research is, that is Syracuse Avenue.
Which
But
is
there are a lot
treated
of,
in the city of Pittsburgh, so
Yeah.
in most cases, they're streets.
but there are a lot of streets where there's a walkway that is aligned with one or more blocks of an existing street. So like there, if you go straight down to the end of Moffett Street, there are steps going down to Old Hickory. And there's a walkway from Mount Lebanon Boulevard to the intersection of Vermont Avenue and Roycroft Avenue. So that like Vermont Avenue. Stuff like this, yeah. Whereas the other ones, they're generally just there. In between there, yeah, they can be considered there. A lot of times they leave from, I call it, if there was a cul-de-sac, I avoided considering that extension to be whether some were kind of aligned, but cul-de-sac goes in a loop and just considered a T intersection. That's it.
So these are just the ones that are maintained by the municipality, like there are others in the community, or?
There are some private paths apparently that are possibly more confusingly, like, yeah, there are some paper streets where there's some asphalt, we don't know how it got there. And probably no one will yell at you if you walk through, maybe, I don't know.
Okay.
And some of them are on Google, there are some of these private ways
Yeah,
on Google
like-
Maps, and it's like, oh, I should not be here. Well,
So,
so, no, but these are all like, I was poring over real estate documents, ordinances, yeah, so
so like Eisenhower to Marshall.
yes. That's the one through the park.
Park,
So
okay.
that's the street like.
Yeah, that's an established
Okay.
walkway there, yeah.
Yeah.
And we maintain that one too.
Okay,
A lot of these were laid out when the housing development was laid
Right.
out, like they
Those pedestrian.
built their cul-de-sac and they included a pedestrian exit.
Interestingly, it probably has, I think, probably most of it to do with ADA. Like around Jefferson School on the safe walking routes. The one between Old Hickory and Moffett is not identified, the one between Beverly and Oak Park Place is not shown on the safe walking
The
routes.
safe walking routes say that they don't want you on them at all.
They show the Ella one,
They
but
show
I think
the Ella.
Ella doesn't have steps. I think
Yes.
it's-
It does have steps.
Oh, it does
It
have steps.
does.
So Ella's
And
on.
there's
It
a
was-
crossing guard
Okay.
right at the
Yeah.
end.
It's shown on the parts of the block.
I have a lot of columns with safe walking routes, one, but there isn't one for the high school, you have to be a cartographer, which I'm in the process of patching them all together, but.
It would be nice if they could all be ADA accessible, but this is Pittsburgh
Yeah.
and our sidewalks generally aren't.
Which I think that's where I appreciate things like the bike Pittsburgh map, where it shows like bike routes, and it shows ones as cautionary, it shows one that says this has to.
Yeah.
It kind of lets you choose, cause. Like, to your point, John, the fact that they're not signed or they're not shown on all maps, there's a lot of folks that are like. You know, this is just my example, but we go to Lincoln and my kids are eventually gonna have to go to Jefferson, I'm like, how do I find the way there? So like, a lot of parents, it's a lot of word of mouth, like, oh, there's this little, bit. I didn't know that was there. And it's like,
Yeah.
And you don't know if it's private or is this going to take me up to
Yeah.
somebody's backyard?
I've
Yeah.
I've
Like-
lived within a half mile of the library for like 7 years now, and I was eyeing up Hazel, sorry, no, it used to be called Hazel Street. Nefkin Way, I was eyeing it up, and it's like, I think it's, but I did not go down it for the first time until I got these pictures.
And I mean, I was just going down a lot of them when we were buying our house to be like, is this a path? Can my kids walk? Like, not everybody's that crazy. But I spent a lot of time on Google Maps, like, I think I can go there, because there's the one that goes from the end of Macaulay and Royce through Asbury Heights, and I know kids use that, and there's like there was somebody who came here that wanted us to open up the fence, basically, from Asbury Heights up to Moffett Street. It's like, well, we don't control that fence, we don't control Asbury Heights, none of that's public road. I hear you, because it is a nice cut through, but, I think, I mean, one place I would love to get this in the hands of active transportation folks, so they can kind of overlay it with like where demand is, where there's opportunities, Personally, I'd love to see them all called ways, because I like the designation of
I think
it being something special.
Yeah, especially because they're specifically for pedestrians, like, you don't want there to be any confusion, although for the most part visually, they don't look like streets, I would hope a car would go down them,
They still pull onto their RT tracks at Potomac on regular, that's.
and that's a good point. So I like the idea of calling it a way, because for me, that would designate it specifically for pedestrian use.
I did have Way as the default name for most of them. Except for the ones where there was shoot, like Beverly Road. I do not like, honestly, I thought of doing Beverly Way at the end of Beverly Road, but at the end I just put for my suggestion, which yes, if we're proposing this, we want to be on the same page with they should be called. Beverly Road, I was like, Beverly Road, Beverly Way, I don't know, honestly, what I liked was, why is it called Beverly Road anyway? It's not a road, it's like, a road is more of a highway, so call it, just rename the whole thing Beverly Avenue.
That's a
But-
good question too. Isn't there a prescription or definition for?
The current ordinance is very narrow. We only have 3 classifications for roads now, but I don't, like, our existing roads
Cul-de-sac.
don't fit into all of them, like.
Boulevard.
Yeah, I think this is a really good. I like what you've done, John. I think it's a good place to have a transportation plan to kind of chew on it too, like thinking of this context and adding some more context to it, like what has Domi done? Because Domi's done a great job rebuilding some of their steps. They've added things like runnels in certain areas where there's a bike demand and a runnel allows you to push your bike up. It seems to do some runnel installations.
I've seen a picture of one there somewhere in the city.
Yeah.
You're talking about the rails. to-
Yeah,
to
I thought there was
push
one
bikes.
close by.
Yeah. I'm none on CMU though.
Well, a couple things.
Yeah, go ahead.
I love it.
Yeah.
Great work. Yeah.
Yeah, you did a really good job.
Yeah, because honestly, I think this could be really simple, a lot simpler. Than a lot of things that come in front of us. Right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because to everyone's point, these are already municipally maintained
Mhm.
assets. So to a certain extent, we could just make it simple. Because I still think this needs to be pushed forward to the commission
Mhm.
for, hey, we want staff to look at this and make sure everything is okay. So I think as base, right, we could just say we want to name and sign pedestrian rights of way that are maintained by the municipality. Period, end of story. That really could get a price tag on that, probably for the next meeting. I want. But again, it's like, I need a post and I need a thing that says pedestrian way, and they need to be put out, over a certain period of time, right? That could be that simple. If we
Well-
want to do namings, there's other variables, right?
I kind of glossed over it, but there are a few where I think the street, particularly well, not just certain streets of various types, I think would benefit if an adjoining street that currently says dead end or something to that effect would have some additional signage added
Yeah.
to clarify that pedestrians can get out.
Right, well, no, exactly, so I mean, there's those variables, so I think to a certain extent, right, it's. The request is, at least in my opinion, to the commission, right? Sign. The pedestrian rights of way. With appropriate signage to indicate, in certain areas that there's a need. Because that. Starts the process. We can come back to naming,
Mhm.
I think, my instinct. I mean, everybody's not gonna go put up signs next month. Yeah, they are.
We might have a skunk works that's already working,
Yeah.
waiting for the go ahead.
And I think that way we can kind of clear any concerns that, hey, can we do this? Are there any issues? Any, solicitor need blesses, all that stuff. And then the other side of this is, I think, Seth's point, the active transportation plan is going to wrap into this, so we just want to make sure that we're not stepping on toes there or changing anything, so. Let's at least let the active transportation plan people get started before we try to do anything. But I think we can at least get this over the fence and say, the Mobility and Transportation Board wants to, get the blessing from the commission to, review. Pedestrian rights of way that are unsigned with the recommendation to sign them. However you want to word it. And consider these other items. But we want to get the engagement of staff
Yeah,
initially.
I mean, yeah, I definitely assumed someone would be double checking someone. or
Yeah.
researching. Let me provide some of the context from my end. I mean, I think the reason I went down this rabbit hole is like, oh, this is something that could be done quickly.
Mhm.
And be like a nice, I guess, capstone to the board's first year. But I'm also approaching it from the perspective of I don't always, I am a civil engineer. This is not my specialty, road design, but I came from the perspective that I have been, in addition to all of this, I have been looking at like, how should this be signed? So I've actually been trying to start something from that end. So I was like, so the way I was looking at it was, some of these need names now, like the
Sure.
sooner we start looking for a name, the better. And then once we figure out where the signs want to go, we will have the name ready to go. That's how I was looking.
I'm not opposed to that. I think to a certain extent, commission is not gonna get down into the weeds of what to sign, or what to name it. But I do think commission needs to just be informed and they need to say, yeah, go ahead and keep moving. So don't wait for names. Let's get it
Right.
blessed here as we want to move this forward. Considering naming as needed. Ultimately, the goal is to sign pedestrian, ways. In whatever ways deemed appropriate with the mobility board and with, staff.
And my thought behind the active transportation plan is more their recommendation, like, which ones should be. I guess the question is, how much does the municipality own, or how much is public right of way? Because you can see like, these hedges have gotten. They're probably due for removal, but at the same time, that's people, citizens on both sides, that they're gonna be like. So, okay, if we're gonna remove the hedges, is there a fence? Because it's all about property ownership. We do a nice fence with some vegetation. It is more controllable than these hedges that are, privet from the 50s or something like that. Just recommendations for them, like, these should be a priority. I think they all should be signed because they're functional and they're maintained. But which ones should we be looking at? Like, oh, this would be if it had a runnel and had this and it was bigger, you might get more folks riding a bike, because those factors, the active transportation plan, just a priority element.
Well, I love the fact,
In the network.
yeah, and I just love the fact that frankly, just putting a sign up. Makes people aware,
Yeah.
right? So even if we haven't solved the hedge, we
No.
haven't solved the runnel.
Yeah.
People are like, oh, I can go that way, which I agree, right? It's a huge issue around here. But the other piece of this, and I know you look mainly at streets and not at parks. But was it, I don't remember which board it was last year, talking with, I think it was parks. Well, anyway, talking about understanding the trail network as part of the walking network, right? As one piece of the whole puzzle. Again, not that I need to name it per se, because it's kind of understood to be a path that people are a way that people can use, but from an active transportation planning perspective, I do need to understand it, and potentially I need to understand, right, the design of a path that is intended as a thoroughfare as opposed to just a nature trail.
The main park ones are like, there's a couple cement ones that are kind of narrow, like if you
Right.
really want it to be transportation, it should be X, or it wants to bird park, like if you were, if you move, because people already do it. But if you want to actually
Right.
move it and put it on the map.
So,
Yeah.
so again, that's where the active transportation plan, I think, comes into play and helps us understand. But to your point, right, we need to at least make people aware that this is a public thoroughfare and intended to be one. And how do you do that? You put up a sign.
I think I was viewing it as this naming and signing is something that's too simple to be involved in the active transportation plan. I was assuming the active transportation plan would be the runnels would be more the purview of that, and in the fancy fence, so the.
No, but I think the sign is a good place, but you can do that right now. I don't think the active transportation plan impacts that at all. We should name them all, that kind of put it on commission's radar. And it'll be whatever ways, the ones that are on there, whatever way, we think in your priority capital list and active transportation plan, you should do this when it's time to build it, or time to fix it. Here's some ideas when the time comes.
And hey, we spent what, $70,000 putting up the
Historic.
historic.
Oh, those street signs, yeah.
Some people would probably be less mad about this. Some people are gonna be
Yeah.
mad.
Well, they would
Mad.
notice, they might notice less,
Yes.
except the people who want it, and
Yeah.
they will be happy.
Simply making your work available publicly, like, why can't we make a map? Like, forget all this stuff where we have to like add signs, and we just have a map and maybe like local real estate agents, like get them to like buy in on like maybe a promotional thing and like, you know.
Naming rights, after sure way.
Howard Hanna.
St. Clair Way.
Real estate agent and you're promoting our community, you know. How do you tell somebody that's never been here that we have these walkways?
Yeah, and chances are they wouldn't even know. Yeah. you know.
Yes.
I agree. I live on Old Farm and there's the
Yeah.
pathway, and I'd be honest, when I first walked through there and people ask me like, can we just walk through here? Cause it ends in a driveway.
Yeah,
You know, and there was a recent issue with the driveway on the other end where a neighbor and felt like the people were parking their car too close
Yeah.
and not allowing enough access. And they're like, well, it's our driveway.
yeah.
You know, and so,
Was that on the list?
yeah,
I don't think so.
it's, yeah, so I think naming them or at least signing them.
Yeah.
Gives people the impression that yes, you can actually
Right.
use this.
Yeah.
And John, did you say they are or not on the GIS?
I did not look at
They're
every
not.
single.
They're not on the municipal GIS system.
So honestly, that's
Syracuse-
another good point, like to get
Syracuse
them,
Avenue is there as a sidewalk. It's just, yeah,
yeah,
but yeah, in general, I think most of them.
but getting that on the GIS named, I think would be a nice thing too.
Does Old Farm have steps, Aaron?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually
It
a
prob-
walkway.
it probably should.
I mean, it's,
Yeah,
it's,
there's a-
It is.
And there's a manhole cover right in the middle of it. You know,
On Country Club. On Country Club.
between Old Farm
No, they're-
and the two ends of Old Farm. A country club
Yeah.
over to.
Yeah, it's through there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Somebody patched it recently. I mean, it
Yeah.
needed some cold
They did
patch
some
and there were
tree
a
work there
couple,
too,
yeah,
'cause we were contacted by a resident up on Brugger, so there aren't municipal trees along that, so.
yeah.
is the
Yeah.
driveway actually a right of way?
I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the only way to
Yeah,
access
Cause
the
like,
path.
there's a car
Yeah.
parked in there right now, and you can't see the other.
There's
end of
usually
it.
2 cars parked there and yeah, I mean, it's their driveway.
I think that's one of the ones that Rudy doesn't have records of. It was not on this list.
I think I always assumed that was a paper street going through there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a few paper streets that.
And at some point, there's bollards on
Yeah.
the country club end, so
Right.
somebody installed something there, you know, in the
To
asphalt.
keep cars from going through there.
I mean, it was before I lived
Yeah.
there, you know. so
That
that's
might
been-
be a future item where some of these, there may be more research needed. I
Right.
think these are generally clear cases. Yeah, that's an example of one. It's like maybe it's a right of way.
Would we be able to, like, legally just make this public? Not put it on GIS or something, that's not.
They are public rights of way. They're honestly, I don't know if they would really help put it on the municipal website.
You don't think so?
Not really.
I think-
No, I don't think most people are gonna look, frankly.
Most people use Google Maps or Apple Maps. or-
Yeah, right, and honestly, I would suspect that in a lot of cases, you could just go in and mark it as pedestrian way as a general user, and as long as Google adopts it, accepts it, it's a pedestrian path. They're not gonna go judge it. But I think the more important thing personally is putting a sign up. To a certain extent, it's letting people know that they can go through, but then there's also the factor of if we are maintaining something. And someone's parking their car there, well, now that there's a sign, they're might be discouraged from parking right in the middle of it, because they too understand that this is a public right of way. That people will use. Which might discourage people encroaching on some of these spaces with their driveways.
I have a feeling it's not actually their driveway.
Oh, no, I know, it's not, but it has become
yeah,
their driveway.
Yeah, everyone is, squatters' rights, like,
Uh-huh,
it's far enough off the end of their lot, and you've got the overhead wires, like, this is a paper street.
I think some research should be done too to make sure that, because there's some areas that I found that were vacated that you didn't realize that they were vacated, that you did some research, the legal research, so.
And paper streets are in that weird,
Exactly,
weird
yeah,
place, like, it's
exactly,
been
and
this amount
it
of
could be a
time.
part of it too,
Yeah.
there's one over, like you were saying, Aaron, over at the end of Sleepy Hollow, where Sleepy Hollow would connect.
Yes.
If where Richland is,
Yeah.
yeah. Part of that was vacated, half of one half, So a quarter of it was vacated, one property owner wanted that years ago. And so it's been vacated, so it doesn't go pass all the way through. So just throwing that out there for my 2 cents.
Well, so,
Is for the research, which is why I was asking for all those ordinances, I searched for every. Reference of vacation I could find in the municipal streets and sidewalks appendix and the public property appendix. I don't know how complete they are. But what I found was municipal way was entirely vacated and the street was rebuilt and these stairs. I think they were just kind of left as like public steps associated with the building. So that actually probably would need to be.
I think that probably took place when the south garage was built and that because
Yeah.
municipal way actually went all the way through.
Yeah.
Washington Road
Street,
before,
right.
right? So in order to put that ramp in and connect the Washington Road to the upper deck of the garage. They had to cut off access for vehicles to the end because that was the roadway that went straight through. I've seen some old
Good
pictures.
yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some old
Yeah.
pictures where they were standing on Florida and you could see all the straight up before the garage
That's
was
gonna
there.
be crazy steep though.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
So that's one example. Syracuse Avenue, part of it was vacated, but then when I read it, it was actually a different block of paper street. And it was only even half of that block. So there's still half a block.
So
of
one
paper.
thing I will say is if we want this to go through the commission, we need to simplify it. Because you're going to have, you're gonna like find tons of like little exceptions and weird things and ones that like you probably didn't even like uncover yet.
Well.
But I
so
think what you-
there are ones that I left off
Yes.
this list.
So what I'm saying is the
These are the
beauty of what
ones-
you created is it's pretty simple, like this is where we start. And once you formalize this, and if we can get this through commission, and basically say we do this, then there's a mechanism. That if somebody else brings up this weird whatever, then there's a mechanism in order to get it then assigned.
Oh, okay.
So I'm saying
I like
basically
it,
what
yeah.
you did was, like, the beauty of what you did is you simplified it enough that I think we can take it to commission and get it through. It should be fairly simple.
I agree, I think that was great work, and I know that, that the Safe Routes to School is going to be revisited and to have some
I-
updated
I agree with
information. Why not include, and if they're signed, it's just
Yeah.
gonna help
Yep.
make that process easier.
It makes it more comfortable for folks that are interested and they're like, I would walk if I could cut through there, but I don't know if it's safe or not that that's not safe, but it just,
Yeah.
it creates a
Who's
mechanism like.
maintaining it? Is it really?
It makes Rudy's job maybe harder eventually when we wanna add lighting to some of the.
The community,
Yeah.
coming from a community where like. Houses are fenced and things like,
Yeah.
that was a shock moving here, is that like my neighbors are literally in my backyard and like all of the things. And so walking, just looking at a map and thinking, oh, there's a park around the corner, and then walking there, and my girls and I literally stood there like it was down the side of two people's houses, and it was just. Did we go? Did we
Yeah.
not go? I'm pulling a
Yeah.
satellite on my phone, going, no, it's there, but like, so
Yeah.
I think that it would have been reassuring, just being new to the community. To have a sign, yeah, yep, that's it.
And you can go there.
And it really brings the public ownership. I think it's great stuff, John.
And I think you mentioned like a bit of prestige to your community as well, just to show that you are valuing pedestrians and how they move around.
Yes, well, when I said proceed, what I meant is like, look at us, we're like the city of Pittsburgh.
You guys celebrate them. There's some sketchy ones. There's like.
Yeah.
That's it, but they've done a great job renovating where they can. It's a budget thing, but they they have the step trek group, and they've got different groups that are just walking, trying to walk every city
I
step.
think it became part of Pittsburgh's identity too, and they took a little bit of pride in their Pittsburgh stairs.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why we couldn't do that too, as far as like take pride in some of these pedestrian streets and ways that basically help people move around.
It was great foresight, like the community was built at a time, like these are all original, basically, the ones that. These homes were built. So it's like.
Honestly, it'd be nice even like if Mount Lebanon Magazine like highlighted something, it's like, did you know this was here? Like, yeah, just sitting here today, I learned about a bunch of these, like I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know about this.
Yes.
Let's-
But if we name them, that becomes a story, that becomes a like, hey, look at all of these. There could be a map that gets created once all the street names are assigned to it. And then it becomes like a cool, maybe, like scavenger.
Yeah, it could be a total story, I
Yeah.
love that.
So you want to?
It sounds like we want to propose something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, as I said, my original intent was to. Was to recommend that the commission. Name these first and then look into prioritizing with like. I was gonna eyeball how much signs would cost and like figure out, it's like, how many of these could we realistically do?
Well, that's what he can
Go,
do.
go, Benjamin.
I make it as simple as possible.
Fine.
Of like why we wanna do this. These are the ones we'd like to start with and then get it over to commission. Well, basically, I think it goes to Rudy first, right? But you guys can, you can put a dollar figure to it. Then it goes to,
That's good as manager, right?
and you're gonna keep it real cheap.
Cardboard and Sharpies.
And you're not gonna spend any of our
You can wax that,
Thursday, right? Yeah, as long as our 30K doesn't.
So do
Yeah.
we want to? Propose this as I wrote it, plus this, just say, and also put. Identifying signs up for these.
You were kind of speaking to it, Andrew, just put in something simple enough, like we've, through research and effort, we've identified these pedestrian rights of way, we would like to sign. The pedestrian rights of way with the appropriate and needed signage to highlight their importance to the community and those around them.
Yeah, I think that's largely it, right? I mean, again, there need to be additional steps, clearly.
Yeah.
Rudy's gonna have research to do on pricing and where, and solicitor probably needs to make sure that things are clean. But then again, it's like, okay, at that point, yeah, in that time. Well, I would say, again, if naming needs to happen, then, that's something that I think this board would at least. Be able to check off.
I think that's the important part. I think the board isn't so much about the nitty gritty of exactly which ones get what the names are and what exactly which ones. I think it's the concept that we identify this as an important thing to do. The commission basically greenlights it. Your group is gonna have input on which ones you think are the most, prioritized or whatever. But I also think eventually, once it becomes apparent to the community we're doing this, you're gonna come out and say like, well, what about this little thing? Can we do that? Or-
So like you said, I'm not preoccupied with the actual names themselves. I identified, there are 3 that already had them, and there are 8-ish that basically, it's like, just this should be the name. But yeah, those 6, just name these, which I assume would. I would assume that they want people from the neighborhood to put suggestions. I was gonna try to come up with placeholders in case nobody did, but.
Yeah, I like the fact that they make sense, look, the way you named it made sense to like the locality of the street or whatever.
Yeah, the core of the proposal as I uploaded it to the website SharePoint, and I'm sure nobody read it, was because I did it this morning, was that they be.
Yeah.
Not huge, not so much what the name should be, except where I found something.
Yeah.
So names and signs, or just names,
Two names and signs.
No, it names
I
and
think
signs.
visual indicator is important.
Yeah.
It's just.
And could I append to the signs that it should have some sort of special indicator like the little Pittsburgh STEM guy?
Yeah,
which is
something like-
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, go for it, Doc.
Okay,
So just one thought though, I do live on Beeline. And so at the end of my street is the path to the pool. It's the path to, I walk on it, I don't know, several times in the week, but. It's a little different because the start of it is in between two people's properties, if you will. It's actually probably technically, there's a pathway that's my neighbor's driveway right up against, and then right up against the other neighbor's yard. But I'm just thinking out loud, like, where would a sign go? Because there's a cul-de-sac and then it's, you know what I mean?
This
There's no
is-
natural
this is what I was gonna do for next month.
barrier.
But it sounds like it might be more like figured out reading. I'm having fun doing this, I would happily continue. My idea for that was probably, if I assume there's some sort of dead end sign, I think you can put.
No outlet, yeah.
Yeah, no outlet, So I think actually, what's the engineering term? That's a warning sign, I think. But it add an additional warning sign below that says accept pedestrians at that end. And since that is the unusual case of it being an extended dead end on the Lynn, there might not be, I don't know, like maybe you want to put something right at the entrance to that path.
I think the one neighbor's okay with it. They've got some grass on the one side of that.
Oh,
sidewalk.
pedestrian zone, I'm sorry, probably pedestrian zone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
And then maybe if you wanted to put a street sign in the park, I don't know.
yeah, no, okay, I mean,
And
I'm
that's
just
in the
thinking of
cul-de-sac,
these little
right, now?
details, yeah.
Yeah.
That's the end of my street. But the only other thought, and again, I'm getting super nitpicky, is technically you're not allowed to have dogs in Main Park, which is like a big stickler. I'm not a dog person at all. I know, and I'm totally not popular because of that. But I'm not like a person like, you can't have a dog. I don't ever say anything. But that's my only other concern is if we open this up. And like this particular, you're not supposed to bring your dog there. And people do, and I don't say anything. But I don't know if that means, and the same with the schools, like you're not supposed to have any dogs on any of the schools.
I'm a dog person, and dogs at schools frustrates me.
It is first, yeah.
And
It's
then
like,
clutter.
where do they go? Where do they go to the bathroom? On the ball fields that my kids are then rolling. And
So.
Yeah.
Again, just more thought, like, if we open this up and say like, no dog, I mean, I know that there's no dogs in Main Park, but.
I mean, I don't, this is,
The entrance exists.
That's a
People
park
are-
signage
Yeah.
question,
That's something
It's
that's-
kind of
Okay.
awesome.
I think, as opposed to a right of way signage
Yeah,
question. It's a valid one.
I mean, like saying we wanna open this up and encourage this, but, at the same time, there are more rules,
just need about limited mag reminder on,
Yeah.
no dogs.
I mean, I'm sure you can currently enter the park through all sorts of places where there's no dogs allowed sign.
Right.
Yeah, no, I mean, believe me, I'm not saying, we have to, it's just one other consideration, cause I think about it, like I said, see all these dog walkers, and I'm like,
Mhm.
what the way they're going, yeah. But maybe even our sign too could have like a little pool, cause people maybe don't know you can go to the pool that way.
Yeah, sometimes like if you've ever seen in, hiking trailers. you could-
Blazes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
kind of go, and, once we get past the initial
Yeah.
setting of signs, we were to get like a next level into some of the parks and just have little areas. that
People have like
tell you-
QR codes even now,
Yeah.
that they QR code and it shows where where it goes. That's a neat.
That's cool. I've heard of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been on like different hiking trails, so
Yeah.
it shows you, it'll bring it up the hiking and you know where it comes out at.
Huh.
So. That's cool. So there's some nice opportunities to do some things, but I think, again, by making this like, the reason why we're gonna do it, moving it over, getting ready to put some cost to it, moving it to commission, getting it approved.
Yes.
I like the idea of like saying. we
I
want
love
it.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
Okay, so. This proposal plus add the signs and have them have some sort of little pedestrian identifier. Like the little step man from the Pittsburgh uses. I think it's a fire exit sign that they.
I like that though. I mean, it gives it.
I like it too.
Yeah.
I think we should, it's not, it looks like it's slightly custom.
Technically, a little German walker that's technically not allowed on the pedestrian side, but you can, I don't know if anybody's ever seen a pedestrian signal, has like a little hat in Germany and he's walking.
Implement.
Yeah. Yeah. They make a recommendation and we can vote.
Okay. You want me to go through the whole list? Or-
No, just like a simple proposal
Okay.
to commission.
I propose that these streets be named or defined as public rights of way, municipal way as appropriate. And that there's a list, including a list of recommendations for certain streets that are basically extensions of other streets. That the pedestrian ways be signed as streets in accordance with the municipal code. And that street signs have a special pedestrian symbol indicated there. pedestrian waves. Do I have a second, or is that?
No,
that's
it's-
Joe?
I think that's the motion, right? Is somebody in a second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes to the commission. I don't believe we have any other new business unless there's anything else the board would like to discuss. So with that, I will say our next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, February 4th at 6 P.M. And I will make a motion to adjourn. Second,
I'll second.
all in favor? Aye. All right, you're adjourned.
What a way to start the year. All right.